What is the path to happiness? We're taught to focus on ourselves, but what if that actually leads us away from happiness? Hey, I'm Vince Antonucci, psyched to hang out and get to talk to you today at Canyon Ridge. And I want to encourage you to follow the message notes below as we continue our series, Unexpected Joy. Maybe invite a friend to watch with you or tell a friend about this. See ya. I am so excited to be back with you. So I spoke here 13 years ago. And so maybe if you've been around for a long time, it'd be kind of like if someone set you up on a blind date and then 13 years later, someone else set you up on another blind date and you show up and you see the person and you're like, wait a second, did we do that? Right? It's kind of like that. So 13 years, a long time. In fact, how many Fast and Furious movies do you think came out since I spoke here last? The answer is six of them. It's kind of a long time. But man, I love this church. Drew's become a great friend of mine, and you guys have blessed me and my family in all kinds of ways, so thank you. We are in a brand new series, just started last week, about finding joy, happiness, in unexpected places. Now, the place that we are taught in our culture to find joy, what we kind of expect is that self is the path to happiness. We're taught self-awareness and self-advancement and self-fulfillment. You need to love yourself, take care of yourself. You be good to you, right? We want to be happy, and we are taught, we think that prioritizing self is the path to happiness. One way that we see that, we live it out, is through status, honor, and social recognition. We like those. We like status. It's why we feel the importance we put on the number of square feet in our homes. We think the bigger the house, the happier I'll be, right? And how new our car is. The newer my whip, the happier I'll be. In our salaries, the more money I make, the happier I'll be. It's important to us because we care about status. And we care about honor and social recognition. You might not, I don't know, but man, that's part of the reason we like social media, right? So we can show off our house and show off our car and the vacation we went on and how smart or funny our kids are, unless our kids are not smart or funny, and then we don't mention them on social media. It's like, what kids? I don't have kids, right? We think self is the path to happiness, and we see that in our need for status and honor and social recognition. That's just the culture we live in. And it's very similar to the culture of the Philippians. So in this Unexpected Joy series, we are studying through the book of Philippians in the Bible. The theme of the book of Philippians, short little letter, is joy. You read through it and it's just joy, 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 joy. And so it's kind of like, hey, do you want to be happy? Yes, we all want to be happy. And Philippians says, here's how. And man, we need this. There was a Harris Poll survey. They asked a ton of Americans, are you happy? 70% said no. There was another survey Gallup did, and they looked at all the countries in the world and found that despite having probably the best circumstances in the world, the people of the United States rank 33rd on the happiness scale. So Philippians was a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to the Christians who lived in a town called Philippi. Interesting, important thing about Philippi is that it was a Roman colony. Very unusual. Like when you read through the rest of the New Testament, almost none of the other cities in the New Testament were Roman colonies. So Philippi was a Roman colony and had Roman culture, and Roman culture was all about status, honor, and social recognition. For a Roman culture, there were clear ranks of people. There were the elites and there were the non-elites. The elites made up of about 2% of the population, and 98% were the common people. At the bottom of the rung of the social ladder were slaves. Quick side note, slavery was different than what we think. We think it's based on ethnicity and race. Back then it wasn't, it was more economic, but there were slaves. And they were the bottom rung of the ladder. Above them what were called the freedmen. They were not slaves, but they had like almost no rights. And then above them were citizens, that's what they were called, and they had certain rights. Above the common people were the elites, and even they were ranked. So some elites were called the equestrians. They were called that because they had enough money to buy a horse, kind of like today's Teslians, right? You get it? Yeah, same thing, right? And so above the equestrians, there was a small group of people called the Roman senators. And then finally, at the top of the ladder was the Emperor Caesar. Everything in their society was designed to reveal and reinforce status. For example, the clothes they wore. So freedmen every day would wear a special hat to show to everyone who they were, that they were freedmen. A citizen could wear a toga. Slaves and freedmen could not wear togas. An equestrian could wear a toga, and they could also wear a gold ring. He got it at Jared's. Senators, they wore togas, but their togas had purple stripes. They were like Gucci togas, right? So even the legal system. So in America, we have this idea that everyone is equal before the law. Not in Rome, not in ancient Rome. For instance, citizens could not be whipped as punishment, but non-citizens could. The most dishonoring punishment in Rome was to be hung on a cross to die. It was called the slave's punishment. And it was designed not only to kill you, but also to publicly humiliate you. Seating at public events is all about your rank. And so like at the Colosseum, when they came to watch an event, Caesar would sit right up front in the middle, and then behind him, the rows were filled with the senators. Behind them were the equestrians. Everything was about status and honor. And the goal was serve yourself, promote yourself, try to advance yourself. Slaves wanted to become freedmen. Freedmen wanted to become citizens. The goal was always to advance. You wanted to raise up your level. The worst thing, literally the worst thing that could happen to you would be to lose your status, to go down a level. In fact, they had a technical word that they used to describe when someone lost status. The word was humbled. It was called being humbled. And being humbled was the worst thing that could happen to you. In Roman culture, and so in Philippi, which we're about to read, the goal, the path to happiness, serve yourself, promote yourself, advance yourself, which sounds kind of familiar, right, to us, yeah? And Paul is writing to these Philippians and people who are living in that culture, and he wants to help them throughout this whole letter to understand how to be happy, how to find joy. Look what he writes starting in verse 3 of chapter 2. He says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord." So we are gonna walk through that passage kind of verse by verse, but even just on a first reading, understanding what we now do about Roman culture, you can see how shocking that was, right? Like what he wrote is like revolutionary, right? He starts out, he says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. So selfish ambition means it's about me, right? And there's kind of an idea of competitiveness, like it's about me and I wanna be better than you. And Paul writes, don't do that anymore. I know what you've been taught. Stop. Like, don't do that. Don't do anything out of selfish ambition. And he writes, or vain conceit. It's an interesting phrase. So the word vain literally means zero, which we know. It's like if you ever did something and then realized you shouldn't have done it, didn't need to do it, you might say, oh man, I did that in vain, right? It means I did it for nothing. Vain means zero. The word conceit comes from a word that means to multiply. And so like when someone's conceited, it's like they're trying to make themselves seem bigger than they are. So vain conceit literally means to multiply zeros. I am not good at math. I freely will confess to you, but I'm pretty sure 0 times 0 equals 0, right? Yeah, you don't have to be great at math to remember that one, right? So the idea Paul is saying is, hey, when you make it about yourself, what you're doing is multiplying zeros. Don't do that. It's not about you. And he reinforces that in the next sentence. He writes, rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. He tells them, and you need to humble yourself. Remember, being humbled was the worst thing that they could experience in their culture. It was avoided at all costs. And yet, here's Paul saying, no. It's exactly what you want. Choose to humble yourself, to lower yourself, to view other people as more important than you, which is really challenging because we all view ourselves as the most important, right? We do. Like, you don't think you do. You're like, not me. Yes, you do. We all do. Here's one way you see this in your life, okay? I guarantee it. When someone takes a group photo, and you're in it, and you get to see the photo, who do you look at? And if you look good, is it a good picture? Right? Everyone else can have their eyes closed. One person can be mid-sneeze, and you're like, that's a good picture. This is a keeper. I like this one, right? Because you look good, right? We put ourselves first, right? Paul's saying it's not about you. He continues, verse 4. He says, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. That's hard too. Do you know why? Because I am interested in what I am interested in. I'm totally interested in what I'm totally interested in. And I am not the least bit interested in what I'm not interested in. You know who else is like that? You are, right? We all are. We're all interested in what we're interested in. We're not interested in what we're not interested in. And here's Paul saying, hey, from now on, you should be interested in what other people, all right? You should care more about other people than yourself. View their interests and their needs as being more important than your own. Wow. You hear all this and you start thinking, like, who would actually choose to live this way, right? And that's why Paul says next, he says, you need to have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Because Jesus chose to live this way. And if you follow Jesus, that means you choose to live this way. That's what it means to be a Christian. Being a Christian is not just believing in Jesus. Like if you read through the Gospels, the books about Jesus, he didn't go up to people and say, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you believe in me? Like I need some people to believe. No, he didn't. He would say to people, follow me, follow me. So to be a Christian is to believe in Jesus and therefore follow him in living life the way he chose to live it. And he did not live for status or honor or social recognition. He lived for others. And so, if you want to follow Jesus, you have to unfollow you, right? If you want to follow Jesus, you have to unfollow you. And to illustrate the way Jesus lived, to remind us, Paul kind of gives us a kind of Cliff Notes version of Jesus' life. Here's Jesus, verse 6. Who, Jesus, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. You know, I think the truth is we all kind of act like we're God, right? Like life should revolve around us, right? At least my life, should revolve around me. Like I'm the center of the universe, or at least my universe, which is why we say things like I was here first, and I worked hard for this, and we get mad when somebody doesn't serve us in the way we think they should. And here's Jesus, who is God, but who never acted like God. Right? It's fascinating. The one person who did not have any signs of having a Messiah complex was the Messiah. Right? It's like, whoa. Jesus never used his God card. I totally would have if I was like if I was God, I would go to the Raiders game and they'd be like, "Okay, sir, your ticket is way up there," and I'd be like, "Yeah, but I'm gonna sit on the 50-yard line in the front row." And they'd say, "No, your ticket's up there." I'd be like, "Yeah, but I'm kind of God, and so he can move. I'm gonna sit in the front, right? Because I'm God." But Jesus never played the God card. Paul says, rather, he emptied himself. He emptied himself by taking the humble position of a slave. He was born as a human being. It says he emptied himself. You know, we do the opposite, right? Like we want to fill ourselves. Like most of our lives about trying to fill ourselves. We're trying to make sure that we have our fill of all the good things, right? We want to have our fill of the best food, the best trips, the best stuff, money. Jesus emptied himself. He emptied himself by becoming a human being and by taking the humble position of a slave. You remember the lowest rung on the ladder, right? Slaves. So God comes down to earth, can live whatever life he wants to live, and he chooses the lowest position. And he just spent his life serving everyone. And if we want to follow him, and if we want to be happy, we'll do the same, right? Even if you don't want to be a follower of Jesus, you're like, I just want to be happy. This is how you're happy. And then it says, verse 8, it says, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. It says Jesus humbled himself. Remember, back then, humbling yourself, worst thing possible, something no one would ever choose, and yet Jesus chose it, right? He humbled himself, and he died a humiliating slave's death on a cross, and he did that for you. And he did that for me. And he calls us to do the same. Let's look at what Jesus himself said in the book of Matthew, chapter 16. Jesus says to us, he says, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, empty yourself, you will save it. Jesus says, if you want to be my follower, you will follow me in humbling yourself, in making yourself a servant to everyone. Even, he says, in carrying a cross. He says, if you want life, real life, like if you want joy, this is the path to happiness. You have to unfollow you and follow me. There was a time, you may know this story, where Jesus washes each of his disciples' feet. They're all sitting around in muddy, dirty feet, which was a job that a slave did or a servant did. And so it's fascinating. Jesus, here he is, humbling himself. But then look what he says immediately after washing the feet. He says in John 13, he says, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. So he's like, I'm not just doing this, you should do this. He says, very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. He says, if you're my servant, you would do what I would do. But then listen to this. He says, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So the word blessed it basically means full of joy. You could translate it, you'll be happy. Jesus says, if you want to be happy, then spend your life serving people. Empty yourself, wash feet, humble yourself, make your life not about you, and you can be happy. Like, if you aim for happy, you're always gonna be disappointed. But if you aim for humble, you'll also be happy. Now, if we're just being honest today, let's do that. You may not trust that Jesus is the authority on happiness. You might be like, well, Jesus said that, but does he really know about happiness? You may be here, this would be really cool. You might be here because you're spiritually curious and you're searching, but you are not yet convinced about the Bible or Jesus. If that's you and you're here, I just want to let you know, man, it's so cool that you're here. Like, this church was literally started for you. And we're so glad that you're here searching. That's totally true. And so you may not be sure that Jesus is the authority on happiness. That's fine. I will tell you, for me, I did not grow up in a Christian at all, but at the age of 20, I looked into these things. And I've come to a place that I believe Jesus is the authority on everything. I believe that because Jesus defeated death. Like he went around saying he was God, and he said, but listen, like, why would you believe that? I'm gonna be killed, and then I'm gonna raise from the dead. And the third day, if I do that, that will prove to you I'm God. If I don't do that, forget about me. And he did it. And so I believe that Jesus is the authority on everything, including happiness. But you may not. And if you don't, that's totally fine. Here's why. Because we have this advantage that people didn't have when Jesus and Paul was writing about this stuff. There is now tons of research and studies which have proven that Jesus is right about happiness. That happiness comes not from status or honor or social recognition, but from serving people and washing feet and humbling yourself and making your life not about you. So if it's cool, I want to share a little bit of the research because I find this stuff fascinating. I love confirmation of this kind of thing. So, like, for instance, the University of Chicago did a study, and they wanted to find what people are happiest in their jobs. Who's happy because of their jobs? And what they discovered is that the happiest jobs are what are called helping jobs. It's jobs where people get to help other people in their work. They also found in their research that income is completely not associated with job happiness. There was other research done. This was in the UK, and they asked the question, are the happiest, healthiest people those who prioritize self or those who live selflessly? And they examined 40 different studies that had been done over 20 years, and here's the big conclusion they found. If you volunteer consistently, if you make the decision, I'm not gonna spend all my time on me, I'm gonna give my time to others, you will have far less depression, less stress, and less heart disease. So here's what else they found. Teenagers who volunteer consistently have far less drug abuse and far less unplanned pregnancies. They actually learned that teenagers who are forced to volunteer against their will and resent it still have all the same positive results as teens who want to volunteer. And they discovered that teenagers who volunteer, whether it's their choice or someone else's, almost always end up volunteering when they're adults. They also found that people who volunteer are healthier mentally, physically, have higher self-esteem, live longer lives, and have higher overall quality of life. You can Google it and you'll see all those results in that study. There was an article in the Los Angeles Times a couple years ago, and the title of the article said, "Studies Find Depression Epidemic in Young Adults." We've all probably heard this, right? So in the article, they say that young people today are 3 to 10 times more likely to be depressed than their grandparents. It's like, man, kids today are they're depressed. And so researchers are trying to figure it out. They're like, why? What's happened? Why? And they've come to a conclusion after years of research. Here's what they've concluded. It's the cultural occurrences that have exalted the individual. That's their words. The cultural occurrences that have exalted the individual. What does that mean? It means that people today, especially young people today, are taught, if you want to be happy, live for yourself, right? Do what you want to do. You be you. But it turns out that actually leads to depression. Real joy comes when you exalt God, not yourself. And when you serve other people, not yourself. And they're discovering, if you're selfish, you lose happiness. And if you're selfless, you gain happiness. That self is not the path to happiness. Loving God and loving people is. There was an article in Time magazine, and the article title was "The Secret to Happiness is Helping Others." And so here's a little section of the article. It says, "We learned early it is better to give than to receive, but is there a deeper truth behind the truism? The resounding answer is yes. Scientific research provides compelling data to support the anecdotal evidence that giving is a powerful pathway to personal growth and lasting happiness. Experiments show evidence that altruism, which means being good to others, right, is hardwired in our brains. And it's pleasurable. Helping others may just be the secret to living a life that is not only happier, but also healthier, wealthier, more productive, and meaningful." I love that they say it's the secret that's been revealed. It's a secret unless you've been reading the Bible for the last 2,000 years and like, well, we kind of knew, right? Jesus sort of told us that, right? One last one. So there's a psychologist. He's a happiness researcher, which is weird to me. Like there's literally people who all they do for a living is study why are happy people happy and that's what they do. So this guy is like the Babe Ruth, the Elvis Presley of happiness researchers. He's like the dude. And his name is Martin Seligman. He's written a bunch of books. One of his books is called Authentic Happiness. In this book, he says, most of us, maybe all of us, sense a void inside of us. It's like, man, there's this mysterious emptiness in me. And we think that we will be happy, we'll finally be happy if we can fill the void with really good things, something we really like, right? If we get enough money, sex, success, fame, churros, right? Like, if I can get the good stuff, then I'll be happy. But he says, after all these years of his research, this is what he does. He says, it turns out that the gap between the more I think I need and finally feeling like I have enough never gets bridged for anyone. He says, you just keep getting more, and no one ever gets to a place where you're like, I feel full, I have enough. In fact, he says in this book, here's his conclusion. He says, all the evidence points to this. The path to happiness is not through filling yourself, but through emptying yourself. And the research is in. When people try to make themselves happy, we try to fill ourselves, they get depressed. But when you spend your life trying to make other people happy, surprise, you get happy. And all of that research is just confirming what Jesus already told us 2,000 years ago. The path to happiness is not status, honor, social recognition. It's humbling yourself. Jesus said, hey, if you want to be happy, wash feet. If you want to be happy, unfollow you and follow me. So, what's your choice? And what's mine? Like, me too. Like, do we really, two questions. Do you really want to follow Jesus? And do you really want to be happy? Because cool thing, they go perfectly together, right? But here's the problem. Like, talking about something like this in a church, it's not hard to get you to agree with me in theory, right? It's not hard for you to go, this is true, we should serve other people, right? The problem is it's easy to agree in theory and feel kind of better about yourself because you agreed with the preacher today and then go home and not make a single change in our lives. And so this can't be just something that we nod our heads in agreement. And we have to actually choose to live this way. And so, will you volunteer? Not once in a while, but consistently. And if the answer is no, you can choose that, right? It's your choice. But if our answer is no, I think we need to at least acknowledge that in that choice, I am not following Jesus. I'm not saying you're not a follower of Jesus. I'm saying in making that choice, I am not following Jesus in that choice. And by making that choice, I'm losing happiness, right? How about for those of us who are married, how about in your marriage? Like, is your marriage about what you get from your spouse or what you're giving? Like, not the right answer, the honest answer, right? If you're looking for your spouse to serve you and meet your needs and you get mad when they don't do what they're supposed to do, and you're not concerned about you meeting, then okay, that's your choice. Just acknowledge in that choice you're not following Jesus, and you are choosing in that choice to not be happy. Because you will be happier in your marriage if you focus on serving your spouse instead of getting served. How about money? You know, God tells us, give consistently and give generously, but will you actually do that? And your choice, but if not, acknowledge, I'm not gonna follow Jesus in that part of my life, and I'm missing out on a chance to be happy. Because if you're selfish, you lose happiness, and you're selfless, you gain it. Self is not the path to happiness. Loving God and loving people is. And so we follow the example of Jesus, right? And we say, man, I am gonna choose to live like Jesus did, and I'm going to empty myself for others. If you wanna follow Jesus, you've gotta unfollow you. And surprise, that's the path to happiness. Hey, if you liked what you heard today, I would encourage you to like or subscribe. And if we can help you in any way, if you need any resources, go to canyonridge.org.